Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. This program features in-depth conversations with the leading names in the subjects of UFOs, abductees, the paranormal, panel discussions, and the very best and brightest of the next generation of writers and researchers. Meanwhile Here on Earth, the show breaking new ground in alternative talk with your intrepid host, veteran investigative writer and researcher, Peter Robbins.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Meanwhile Here on Earth on KGRA. If you are listening to this show and would like to watch it, just take a moment and either go to the Facebook page or the YouTube page of KGRA Digital Broadcasting, and you can watch it. The past weeks I've begun with little monologues here and there about this, that, and the other thing. Obituaries, films, books, whatever I'm thinking about at the moment and want to wander off onto. Being that the nature of this show is in great part biographical interviews, I spent part of my first show talking to you about me. And every once in a while, I think I'll jump back in with that subject. This past week, the main thing that was affecting my life was the weather. I'm a city kid. I was born in New York City. It's where my heart always is. I haven't lived there in some years, but I am now out in rural America in central New York State, a few miles from the great college university town of Ithaca, New York, surrounded by organic farms, and I still get a kick in the morning out of seeing deer on the lawn or foxes or skunks, raccoons, possums. The novelty is overwhelming. And I just thought I'd share with you, this is a house on a hill, about 1,000 feet up, about 5 miles west of Ithaca, New York. I live here. And this is, of course, in the warmer months. Here's life in the hood, traffic crazy, just like West 57th Street in Manhattan. And if you look the other way, there's the neighbor's barn. You'll see a telephone pole off to your left. And this is my entranceway and drive, life in the hood. However, this morning, this is what it looked like. Different. And those two views, looking that way and looking that way. Last Monday, it started to snow. It snows here. It's in the northwest. It happens all the time. But this was special. This was about the biggest snow I can remember being hit with since I moved up here some years ago. And these are some scenes from my backyard here at Nome, Alaska. My picnic table and my bird feeder and my hungry birds that upset me quite a bit. And it snowed almost biblically for 2.5 days. Can't do much with a table like that until spring. Potted plant getting covered up. And completely covered. Well, there's one little stem sticking out there. I did promise myself when I moved up here that I would keep that bird feeder full all the time. I love birds. They are a big part of our lives here in the countryside and in the city too. And I go through a 40-pound bag of black oil sunflower seeds about every 6 or 7 weeks. And so I set to work, shoveling like crazy, and creating this winter wonderland that leads me out to my bird feeder, my intrepid cat. He's an outdoor cat, does not like being cooped up in the house. My sister Helen coined a term for this activity called cat-bin-in fever. She was very clever with the English language. And it's sort of like a run in a prison yard. He has another little path he can go on. View out the front window. And this beautiful view looking out the back of my house this morning. Coffee with my roommate, and this is when I know it's time for me to stop reading. And here's the culprit. And that's really all I had to say about my monologue this morning, this evening. Now, our guest today is an old friend and a colleague that I think the world of. Donald R. Schmitt is the former co-director of the J.Allen Hynek Center for UFO Studies in Chicago, where he served as director of special investigations for 10 years. He was a special investigator for Dr. Hynek prior to that. Don is a 7-time best-selling author. His first book, UFO Crash at Roswell, was made into the Golden Globe-nominated movie Roswell, a film everybody with even a remote interest in UFOs owes themselves to see, and we'll be talking about that film later. His book, Witness to Roswell, was the #1 best-selling UFO book in the world for 2 straight years. Don is also the co-founder of the globally famous International UFO Museum and Research Center in Roswell, New Mexico, and it is my pleasure to bring him on tonight. Don, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. Your mic is off. There it's on.
Oh,
You're good.
I was saying I'm so happy that you have this opportunity, Peter, to show another side of you and also present another side of some of us who can get so caught up in the minutia of the subject matter, and because it is so all-encompassing, as we both know, that it's overwhelming. And we need to be able to step back and just catch our breaths once in a while and just realize that we're, tackling something that most would just as soon go away because they still consider it part of the silly season, still, on the fringe. But you and I know better, don't we?
We do. And
we wouldn't have devoted most of our lifetime to something that pretends to be the biggest story of the millennium.
It's true. And we work in a field with some well-pronounced egos and folks who kind of pride themselves on seeming to just have this one linear aspect to their lives. It was something I first started thinking about years ago in art school, where the artists that I most admired, contemporary and historic, what I knew basically about them was their work. And if anything was out about them, it was essentially, I eat, breathe, and live my art. I do nothing else. I think about nothing else. And in fact, there is more to all of us than what we espouse as the thing we want to be known for. I think it's also important in this age where, since the pandemic hit almost a year ago, that we're all contemplating our lives on a slightly deeper level, I think, and that it's important to have other interests and to share what you're doing and give people an opportunity to know how you became who you are. I think in this case, we
need to be grounded. Yeah. We need to have a solid foundation. Now, I'll never forget famous Cincinnati Red baseball player Pete Rose, for all the controversy surrounding, his gambling and, Cooperstown as far as, making the Hall of Fame and so on. But when his ex-wife described that he was such a fanatic, that he was so obsessed, that he would even sleep, he would go to bed in his baseball uniform each night. And, that's beyond obsession. That's where you are a walking, talking, breathing. You're a robot.
Yeah.
As far as any one, profession. And that's the wonderful thing when we attend the conventions and do things, that we can be ourselves. And we all have, other interests and activities. And we realize that it's because we are so solidly grounded that it provides us that outside vantage point in observing this, juxtaposed to those that have had an experience, for example, and then set out for the balance of their years to prove that it was all genuine, that it was true.
Yeah. One of my objectives in taking on the role of radio show host was first for the people who know who you are, who have followed your work for many years, who have heard you at conferences, read your books, seen you in documentaries, chatted with you, corresponded. I think it's important that they get to know how you became who you are. Equally important is I am doing my best to make this also a radio show and in archive form a podcast that anybody can listen to at any time for people who have never been interested in the subject or could care less about shows like this or the subject, but are now getting interested. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to be introduced to people like you and our other well-known and not so well-known colleagues by learning the story of their life and how they became who they are, and then starting to read that first book, knowing the person that wrote it and not as some distant figure. And with that understood, where were you born, Don?
I was born in where I'm still residing, a community called Hubertus/Holy Hill. It's in the Kettle Moraine area of Wisconsin. When the Ice Age receded, it carved out all of these wonderful bluffs and valleys and lakes. I mean, just imagine. I mean, we have 4 lakes right in our community.
Wow.
And we have a basilica on the highest point overlooking the entire valley.
Oh, my.
With 2 ski hills and 3 golf courses. And it's just a writer/artist paradise.
Wow.
We have artists come from all over the world just to capture that basilica, and especially in the fall with the just the most vivid as far as fall colors, shrouding, those spires, just ascending into the sky. And then at night when they're illuminated, and it just creates, aside from the 4 seasons, even night and day creates a whole different atmosphere. And I just love it for having been all over the world. And I'm talking China, Russia, throughout Europe and Australia and Japan. So this is home. Yeah. That no matter where I've been, I feel I'm living in one of the most beautiful areas of the world. Bar none.
How wonderful to be born into a place that for all the right reasons you don't want to leave. I should also say parenthetically, you are the first guest I've had on and possibly the only guest who will mention the Ice Age in relation to their childhood.
Yes.
I know you're not that old, but
thank you, Peter. I'll let that one down right.
It just came to me. What can I say?
Yes, yes. It was pretty cold. Yes.
Would you tell us a bit about your parents, Don?
My full, inspiration for everything that I have been, what I currently am. My mother is just a half mile down the road. She's going to be 94 years old, still living in the family home. We take care of her like a queen. That was one thing. My dad, who passed away 4 years ago, he would always joke about for having 6 sons. I regret, and I will for the rest of my life, that I never had a sister. Because we probably would have insisted that even at the age of 21 that she would enter a ninja convent, because no man would be, good enough.
Of course.
But my dad used to joke about, boy, I feel sorry for anybody who breaks in this house because they're going to have 7 men confronting them in short order. But my dad was an Army drill sergeant. He was part of the invasion fleet on their way to Japan.
Oh, my gosh.
And he became part of the occupation. And he would always tell us the story that because both mom and dad, Roman Catholic, my 5 brothers and I, we all attended parochial school, which to this day, the fact that my parents worked as hard as they did to send 6 boys through private school.
Wow.
Just think of that. And my dad always talked about because there was a chaplain on board the ship as they were crossing the Pacific. And this priest would always take him aside and in an effort to console him because they thought, that half this invasion fleet were not coming home.
Yeah.
And we fully realized that probably 1 million men, more men.
That's right. 1 million was the estimate. That's right.
We would have had to actually make a full-scale invasion. And this priest somehow knew that something big was about to happen.
Oh, my gosh.
And he was telling my dad that there was a new bomb that was so tremendous in as far as its level of destruction that it would end the war. That before the fleet would even be 1,000 miles outside of, as far as the Japanese islands, that the war would end. The Japanese would be forced to surrender. And as much as my dad wanted to believe it, but then to actually hear of the Japanese surrender. And the fact that it not only took 2 bombs, but they actually dropped 3. They had the first one that they dropped off, out in the Pacific, that type of thing. But it still took the 2 mainland bombs. Yeah. And then my dad was part of the occupation for the next year. And he talked about skiing up in, as far as the Japanese ski hills, that type of thing. And, but what could have been? I would not be here this evening.
Yeah. It strikes me there's an irony already in your life before you were born, connecting you with Roswell, New Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely.
For folks who are not aware, the Enola Gay, which dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, departed the United States of America from, is it hangar number 4?
It would have been P3 at that time.
Yeah.
It became Building 84.
At the Roswell Army Airfield before it flew to California to have the device attached and flew on. And it's always occurred to me that although there's obvious resistance still in our culture to including UFO-related history in legitimate American history, that hangar should be in the National Register of Historic Places, the same location where the debris and the bodies were brought.
The bodies transited through.
So,
in fact, as you mentioned, the Enola Gay, the fact that even the second B-29 boxcar, that both of them were hangared there at the Roswell Army Airfield.
It was the only nuclear air base and only nuclear base in the world at the time.
Precisely. And so you make a good point, and I need to, because it was the reason that they refurbished the hangar, they redid the outside.
Yeah.
And it's one of the few, as far as buildings, that is still extant.
Yes.
From 1947. So historically, I think they need to do something further. You couldn't be more correct.
I know you have certainly been in and out of that structure quite a number of times. I have too, and you will remember, I guess it's about a dozen years ago that we had this huge surreal cocktail party in the hangar itself, with German television covering it, which was quite an event. And I just think it's wild that you have this connection already. When your dad left the service, what did he move on to do as his career?
Well, he had been raised as a farm boy. He had 8 brothers and 1 sister.
Wow.
And I often joke that because my grandparents on my dad's side owned most of the land throughout the entire region.
Oh, my gosh.
His brothers then went into farming, that they were buying up all the land, all the farmland, dirt cheap back at that time. And then on my mother's side, they operated what today is one of the 5-star fine dining establishments in the entire Milwaukee area, called Johnny Manhattan. And my mother, they resided in the upper living quarters, her and her 2 sisters and 2 brothers. But it was the first general store. It was the first switchboard that my mother, when she was 16, she was a phone operator. And then it was the first post office, all part of that same structure.
Wow. So
we had, as far as essentially most of the local business at that time on my mother's side. So between all the land and the business, so the ongoing joke is, if we would have had the foresight and kept everything, we'd own half the town right now.
Oh my gosh. It sounds like you're describing a way of life that, so many of us would long to return to. What was your childhood like? Aside from parochial school, what did you play at? What were your dreams as a little kid?
What was wonderful, Peter, was that because our home was located right across from the school. So we had the playgrounds, we had the nuns' convent, and we had the church and the sacristy, the rectory where the pastor, resided, and the school. So even off hours, we had the playground at our disposal. Terrific. The baseball diamond, the football field. We had access to the school. I was able to run, the daily Milwaukee Journal up to the nuns, up to the convent every day. And 5 days a week, they'd give me, because they'd make homemade pastries and things. Oh. So I'd always come home with dessert for our evening dinner. And then on the weekend, they'd give me 50-cent pieces.
Oh.
And I'm all of 6, 7 years old. And back then, that was,
You bet. Benjamin Franklin.
That was great. I could buy 10 candy bars with that.
Yep.
And we had, with the church, we had, I finally got old enough that I was selected to do the 3-time-a-day Angelus, as they call it within the Catholic Church, that at 6 o'clock in the morning and at noon and then 6 in the evening.
Wow.
I would ring as far as the Angelus. And then on Saturdays, because there were 5 bells in the steeple, I'd always gather up some of the other, neighborhood boys, and we'd all go up to the top of the steeple and take jumping off as far as we were ringing for 5 minutes straight, all of those bells. And so we're at even those ages, we're already involved. And at 5, my first baseball trainer was the late Kenny Kranz. 5 years old, I had one of Vince Lombardi's Green Bay Packers. And so I got to meet all those star players, Bart Starr and Fuzzy Thurston and Ray Nitschke and Boyd Dollar and Forrest Gregg. And I have a lot of Lombardi drilled into me. And my father, as a drill sergeant.
Oh, boy.
So I don't like to lose. And I don't quit. No matter how often, it's like, even Rocky, the whole idea, it's not how often you get hit, it's that you keep getting up. Mm-hmm. Well, I had that pounded into me, even as a child. Mm. My dad would often, as far as a baseball coach, he would say, if you're here to play. You can hurt after the game. As long as you are suited up, you will play. And I don't want to hear any complaints until we walk off the field victoriously. So,
and you played football.
I played football. I was a quarterback. I didn't play basketball because we didn't have a basketball gym. We didn't have a gymnasium at the parochial school. Yeah. So we were strictly outdoor sports. But I had the good fortune of playing American Legion baseball. So we were facing teams all around Wisconsin with pitchers that were already throwing the ball at 90 miles an hour. And realizing that it was a true talent. That to me, when I'm asked, what is the greatest ability, the number one talent of all sports, I would say a baseball player. Mm-hmm. Because you're talking about someone that their reflexes, their eye-hand coordination is so rare that you're only talking about a few hundred in the world that can hit a 95-mile-an-hour fastball with any consistency. It's next to impossible, but there are a few hundred people in the world that can do that.
Yeah, I never thought of it like that. Don, at what age, give or take, did you master reading? And were you much of a reader? And if so, what kind of books were you attracted to as a kid?
I had my first grade sister, teacher was a sister by the name of Sister George. And she was Chinese. Just think, Sister George, and she was a short little Chinese nun, speaking very broken English.
Oh, my.
But it made you pay attention all the more. We didn't have the opportunity of kindergarten at that time, so we started first grade. It was a class of 42. I was number 26. Number 26 as far as based on my alphabetical, seating. So that's always been my lucky number. 26.
Oh, I love it.
But Sister George made you heed and pay attention to every word she said. So it was a blessing in disguise in many reasons. And so I developed such a quick love of reading that my mother could still tell you that even at the age of 6, what do you want for Christmas? And I would have a whole list of books.
Oh,
I wasn't into toys. I didn't want toys. I wanted books, and mostly history. I loved history. And one of the most profound, lasting impressions I had was I was sick because already I was into, that type of schooling. And my parents took me. I was the oldest of the 6 boys. My parents, in 1960, 6 years old, they took me to John Wayne's movie, The Alamo, and to see it on the big screen.
Yeah.
And it was all of 3 hours, which for a 6-year-old seemed like a day.
Yeah.
And to take in at 6 the final siege and all the blood and gore, and to see John Wayne run through with the lance at the end.
Ouch.
And to me, I couldn't get, for example, enough books on the Alamo.
Oh, I went through an Alamo phase, but not like that.
Yeah, Custer's Last Stand, World War II. So UFOs was an easy segue because we're dealing with history. We're dealing as far as with historic events. And then taking it a step further, that famous press release from July of 1947 that they captured a flying saucer.
Yes.
It's a matter of historic fact. It's history. It's history.
What a natural progression. That's wonderful. Did your movie taste also run to historical movies?
I I deplored war movies because hearing Dad talk about what he had observed, what he had seen, what he had witnessed.
Yes.
And then to see it played out on the big screen. I've often philosophized that I think it's the reason that a lot of, especially guys, are into the Three Stooges.
Yeah.
Because it trivializes, it relieves that level of actual pain and violence depicted on the screen. It's cartoonish. It's comic book. The Three Stooges, they really aren't getting hurt. There's never any blood. There's never any bruising. I mean, no matter what they did. And to me, that brought down that level of perceived violence that would certainly take place on a battlefield.
Yeah.
And then with the whole Vietnam War, and realizing that at some point, our numbers are going to come up. And I mean, I'll never forget, Peter, my last quarter in high school, and all the girls, all the young ladies are celebrating the fact, getting ready for graduation. Sure. And all the guys, we were getting ready to go to Vietnam. Because it's something out of your grasp, out of your control. And I think for that reason that I just had a hard time dealing with war movies. Yeah. Because to me, it was a projection of my future.
Yeah. For me, the greatest war novels and the films I would classify as the greatest war movies are, by definition, anti-war novels and anti-war movies. Paths of Glory, All Quiet on the Western Front, Saving Private Ryan. Yes. These do not romanticize or trivialize, but you're right. The movies that just glorify and this hyped up sense of over-nationalism, and Vietnam tore us all apart.
Do you recall that a beautiful scene in the movie Shenandoah with Jimmy Stewart?
Yeah.
And he's lost a big chunk of his family within days because of the Civil War. Yeah. And he's at the gravesite. Yeah. And he's talking to his wife, Martha, if I have the name correct. And he's talking about war. He's talking about the generals. He's talking about the politicians. And he mentions the young boys who just want to come home. Yeah. They just want to go home. And my dad made it a point that we would watch that movie even as young boys, and he would sit there with us and have his arms around us. And
good for him.
Watch my dad cry during that scene.
The best.
Because it was like when we would play football. Yeah. And I didn't know this for years. I didn't realize till I ran into one of the old coaches. Now, I mean, long retired. But he came up to me and he goes, Don, I don't know if you were aware of this, but before we would play, your dad would always come over to the other sideline. He'd come over to the other team and he'd say, now, if any of you hurt any of my boys, like it was like a subtle threat. Like, don't go there. You don't want to deal with me.
Well, I'm not even going to comment on that, except to say you and I were very fortunate to have, and in the course of having, fathers who weren't pathological tough guys. And make you understand that, crying is for sissies and girls, and that emotion is something to shunt off, and real men, are hard guys and all that. It was a gift. It was a gift.
It was. My dad was the hardest, toughest man I have ever known. And yet part of that was the fact that he could watch a movie as far as, what was the one with Legends of the Fall?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And he would cry like a baby.
It's a powerhouse.
Because he could empathize, he could relate.
Yeah.
And the whole idea that my boys, my sons, my dad, who could never, and I say could, never. Not that he didn't want to, but it was the way he was raised. Not once did he ever say, I love you. Not once, even to his deathbed. He said something to me one day, Peter, that was 1,000 I love yous. We were just sitting.
You knew he loved you, but the words were,
Mom and Dad would drop me off at the airport when Dad was still able to drive. And I'd be making a research trip on Roswell. And they knew some of the risk involved. They knew that, and I'm not just talking about the flight, but the fact that, we were working to expose a government cover-up.
That's right.
And there was Cloak and Dagger. I mean, there were characters that we ran into that, at times you wondered.
That's right.
You're gonna come home. And he'd put his hand on my shoulder every time and he'd say, just come home. Just come home. And there's one time we were sitting together in their front room. And out of nowhere, he says to me, Peter, Donnie, if I were ever in a life and death situation, I'd want you there. Because then I'd know we'd have hope.
Beautiful.
1,000 I love yous. 1,000 I love yous. I mean, Dad, I almost broke down because,
My father.
Miss him dearly.
Yeah. As I got deeper and deeper into year after year of the Rendlesham investigation, culminating with the publication of a book that was a top 10 bestseller in the UK for quite a while. Yes. And he read it after following the story for years, there'd be similar concerns. And all you can do is reassure these special people in your life that you're going to be as careful as you can, but you've got to do this. And I know, without ever having met your dad, that he must have been tremendously proud of you and your output and your respect in the field, not just in one best-selling book after another, but how, you're literally taking history, recording it, and setting an archive for the future. And there will come a time, as we know, when UFO-related history will simply be part of history per se. I wanted to ask you, Don, besides your folks, I'm imagining your grandparents and Sister George, coming into adolescence or your teen years, were there any particular adults who helped encourage you or set you on the path that became your career?
One of my dad's older brothers, his name was Andrew. And he was even my confirmation sponsor. So my full name is Donald Raymond Andrew Schmitt. And he was a lifetime bachelor, but he was best of friends with our pastor at that time, Father Cyril Livingston. And I picked up a lot for the fact that here was a priest, and his best friend happened to be my uncle, one of my uncles. And I loved being with him. I loved being up at his farm and trying to help. And he went out of his way in what he would reward me with and what he would hand me $1 for, just a few days, a few hours work, that type of thing. And finally it started the little rumble through the relation. Well, Don's his favorite, nephew, that type of thing. And I guess a lot of us have a favorite nephew or niece or that type of thing. There's nothing wrong with that. And then I'm, all of 7, 8 years old. Why isn't Uncle Andrew around? What's the problem? And the way they finally broke it to me that he had lung cancer. And here was somebody who didn't smoke or drink. and he had been gored by a bull.
Oh, no.
That rammed him up against the wall and with the horns up against his chest, and it just kept pushing and pushing to the point that it collapsed both of his lungs. And it would be years later that, they became malignant.
This is like a farm accident, not that he was running with the bulls in Pampaloma or anything.
No. And it wasn't like a machinery accident or anything. And I had classmates that, how come so-and-so doesn't have a father? Well, he was killed in a combine, accident, or a baler or something of that sort.
Sure.
And, I want to see him. I want to talk to him. Well, we don't know if it's good for you to see him. And I'll never forget the last 6 months, because Grandpa and Grandma Schmitt were just down the road. They had built from the homestead. They built another a home as far as in town. Mm-hmm. And I was able to go to the front yard and just look in through the picture window. And he'd be sitting there just staring out. And it was all I could do to pull myself up, and I would wave to him.
Yeah.
And he would try to, make a smile as through the pain as much as he could. And I could see that he was withering down to nothing. And it just broke my heart.
How old were you?
I was, I believe, 7 or 8.
That stays with you. And
it did. Because you quickly realize that everything is very fleeting. And I think it's one of the reasons, Peter, that no matter what my faux pas, no matter what my mistakes, no matter how often I have fallen, it's too short. It's too little in the scope of a lifetime that we dwell on it. We allow it to hold us down, because we're empowering others to do that very thing that we resist, that we're fighting. Yeah. And we have to, believe in our hearts that, they are just as, culpable, just as gullible. They have fallen just as often. And by allowing them to constantly resurrect it, perpetuate as far as the problem, we are empowering them. We're allowing them to, and we're adding to that ball and chain.
Yes.
And so the best thing to do is, okay, there's a tomorrow and there's a next week. And as long as we have a next month and hopefully a next year, I have another chance to get it right.
Bingo.
And that's one thing from my parents. That was the one thing as far as, especially from Uncle Andrew. I mean, he died at the age of 49 of his lung cancer. But the fact that he wished me a long life. That was the one time I finally said goodbye to him. And that I know you're going to make me proud for as long as you are here. And another individual that I continue to try to make proud. Absolutely.
That's such an important lesson at such a young age. I think for me, the closest thing was losing my grandfather at about that age, and the grief not catching up with me for decades because I didn't see my grandmother cry. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, knowing that we're all mortal, and, for many of us, it's an insect or a bird or coming upon, the carcass of a mouse or something, and then translating it into adult terms. In a way, it's good to have that lesson under your belt as a kid and then move on with your dreams. And I wanted to ask you, Don, I know, like me, music and art have always been an important part of your life. And, we grew up with the pop music that we grew up with. If we're lucky, we were exposed to other kinds of music as well. Was the first kind of music that you can recall or related to or loved, related to growing up, in a church-going family and the music that we associate with? Yeah, good.
Mom and Dad sang in the church choir.
Okay, that's where that comes from.
My dad, if he was working on any project, he was always singing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he'd come into a room and he would sing a song and he would teach us the words, and they typically were love songs.
Oh, great.
Let me call you sweetheart. I'm in love with you, and Edelweiss, and
same thing.
Getting us then involved as far as with the church choir. So then you established a discipline. And as you certainly, we both know, Peter, that music is the purest form of mathematics.
Oof.
And that as you learn to read music, sheet music, and as far as the discerning, as far as the placement of the notes and the cadence, the rhythm, it's all math. And it's just a wonderful discipline. And especially when you sing in a choral group, with a setting, because then timing becomes everything. And it's just the ultimate discipline. And I love it. I relish it, because very often, even within like the Center for UFO Studies, or in sports, or even in co-authoring a book.
Yes.
And you hear the phrase, well, so he's not a team player.
Yeah.
And I pity that, because for me, that's a shortcoming. If you can't work with somebody else, if you can't collaborate with somebody else, that means you're on your own ego trip. Yeah. That means that you have never at least established that rapport that enables you to, come together with somebody else, even within a relationship.
Indeed.
And that it becomes a 50-50 situation. And that you learn when to back off, when to excel, when to speed up, when to slow down. And, such is life. That is what life is all about. And so it's like that beautiful line as far as with Sean Connery playing King Arthur in First Night, where he makes that comment, to his adversary that, we're all here for a short time, and we're all here basically just to help everybody get through this. Life, we all have, these shortfalls and tragedies and illness and loss. We know this as we get older. The longer we live, the more we lose. And as a result, if we're not, again, grounded as to, okay, but I'm still here. I quit, I give up, I live in the past, or once again, okay, I've been blessed with another day. And I still have more opportunities. I still have, like with my mother, who's going to be 94, that she has time for more memories. And that I'm going to do all I can to provide her with as many memories as she still has left. I've seen friends that they can't move far enough away from the family. And they come home for the funerals. And they're so embarrassed, they're so ashamed that they won't even enter the funeral home. They walk out in the parking lot. I mean, I've seen it. How do you regain that? It's no different than a parent for missing all of their children's activities, their ball games, their concerts, their plays. You can't recover that. You can't ever replace that.
That's it. You can't regain it. And I'm guessing that at a certain point you joined the church choir.
Yes.
And you are still singing.
I had to, be able to, carry the tune. I had to be able to demonstrate that I could read the music and that I could sing as far as the part. And then to reach that point where I was taking piano lessons. And then for a few years, I even played concert piano. And to make that choice and combine it with the singing. And I have a cousin by the name of Tom Schatz, who is just a a wonderful bass baritone voice. And for all of Tom has performed as far as at Oklahoma and as far as Brigadoon and other such plays. And so I always aspired to be as far as at his level. And then when he and I were chosen to sing at a lot of the weddings, and then also to sing at a lot of the funerals in the area.
Wow.
And then as church choirs were no longer up and back in the choir loft.
Yeah.
They were up in front. And you had to sit there and look the families, the grieving families at the funerals in the eyes.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, there was one particular funeral that the children were passing the draped coffin in front of the altar, and one by one placing roses atop the coffin as we were singing the rose, and to listen to the little 1-year-old daughter as she's carried past, and she places the rose on the coffin and she goes, "Bye-bye, Daddy."
Yeah.
But again, you have to remain separate. You have to distance yourself. You have to retain your composure because you've been hired to still do your job.
That's right.
But these are all life's lessons that it creates a level of shield, and that no matter what happens, you're able to rely on that. And you realize that establishing your priorities, as long as you're breathing, you still can help, you still can provide, you still can make a difference. And I love it. I love it, Peter.
You've reminded me,
moment of it.
As you know, I sang growing up, and one of my proudest achievements in high school was in my senior year. I was voted president of our choral group, the Choraliers, 125 kids. And at
125,
yeah. And it was a serious group. We do the school plays, the musicals. We broke down into magical groups, barbershop quartets, jazz ensembles. And every Christmas the whole chorus would sing the Creation at one of our local Protestant churches, and every Easter we would sing the Messiah.
Yes.
And, I'm a Jewish kid, but I could care less. I love this music. And all these decades later, I still remember good parts of my second tenor range. My sister Helen, once she started to perform as a rock and roller, decided to study.
Yes.
And studied with a wonderful woman that we all adored. Susan was an opera coach.
Yes.
And a number of Helen and her singing friends started to study with her. One thing I learned from Susan was talking about the only instrument where as a singer, you are the instrument, and there is a sympathetic resonance in your body. And if the words are emotional and the music is beautiful, you can literally be overwhelmed. And that, as a professional or as a dedicated amateur, not getting paid, of course, that's where you get tested. And it's a beautiful thing. You continue to sing in the choir now?
I'm actually president. I have been now for 8 years.
Beautiful.
Of the choral group. And we have our own theater called the Shower Performing Arts Center. And at the inauguration, we performed, and sad to say, he just passed away recently. But we performed between Hal Holbrook doing his Mark Twain Tonight and the Smothers Brothers.
Yeah.
So
Doc, we are going to have to hold it there because we have just blown through our first hour. Needless to say, you're going to have to return a number of times. But for the moment, this is Peter Robbins with my guest and dear friend and esteemed colleague, Don Schmitt, on Meanwhile Here on Earth on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. And we will be back in 3 or so minutes. Return with us.
Intrigued by paranormal talk radio? You'll love the new paranormal radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the paranormal radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The paranormal radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Are you still at it?
Yeah, I need more speed.
This baby's fast.
My dad's fast. He's scary fast.
You really think you could beat him?
Yeah, because I drink more tea than he does.
Yeah, right.
You know, pal, it's the tea that makes you go.
Oh. Hey, Dad.
You know, kiddo, you have to drink a lot more tea to be faster than me.
Drink the tea that makes you go. Life Change Tea. You may not need as much as Dad. You never know. GetTheTea.com. Log on to GetTheTea.com.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The on-air live button. So just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
Mainstream media's most wanted. KGRAradio.com.
And we're back, meanwhile, here on Earth, with special thanks to my amazing producer, Mr. Race Hobbs, and my soul brother, Albert Bouchard, founding member of the Blue Oyster Cult, who wrote our extraordinary theme. We are back with our guest for this evening, Mr. Don Schmitt, in Wisconsin. And Don, join me again.
We are here. We have almost as much snow on the ground as you do, but you have us beat.
Before we get on to the subject of UFOs, when you went to college, it was to study art primarily?
It was art. My mother had beautiful penmanship. So, and you too, Peter, you remember that back then we were even graded by our penmanship.
Oh, yes.
That everything was hand scripted, and script writing.
You bet.
And so you got, at least in parochial school, we got graded. We had a separate grade just for our penmanship.
And if only that happened now.
I know. And from first grade on, it was a heavy emphasis on not only music, but also art. And my mother saved pictures of me, even in a high chair where I was already drawing. And if I didn't have paper available, I was drawing on the walls. And I will never forget one time my parents were gone and I was doing a mural in one of the stairways. And my dad kind of looked at it and said, well, it's almost good enough to keep, but why don't we try it in a few more years? And so
I believe that's called an offhand compliment.
An offhand compliment, absolutely. And so by the time I was in sixth grade, I was already working as an artist. I was getting paid for my paintings.
Beautiful.
And so I had, and I'll never forget, his name was William Stiles. He was my eighth grade teacher. So I had a late teacher. And I did a drawing, and he said to me, you seriously need to consider going into graphic illustration.
Mm-hmm.
I was ready as an 8th grader. So I already knew, and you did too. I mean, we knew what we were destined. We didn't need to be in 8th grade or even a senior in high school still deciding what we wanted to do when we were growing up. And by the time I was in high school, and as it turned out, he would have been my brother Ron's father-in-law. He's deceased now. He died, in his 40s. But nonetheless, he was my 2-year high school art teacher, William Krieger. And Wayne Krieger. I'm sorry. And he would take me aside, and he would always go, I have this project. I have this. You want to help me with it? So while the rest of my classmates were working on their assignments, I would be in the studio working with my teacher on paid projects.
Wow.
And he would take me and he'd go, Don, I wouldn't even go to college right away. I would work in the field, get as much experience as you can, and then go into it with both legs running, and then you're just going to shoot past everyone else. So that's what I did. I mean, I spent the full year after high school just working and I worked in an architectural firm.
Wonderful.
I worked as far as within the arts department at Masterlock, a company. And by the time I got to college, I'll never forget the first day in lecture hall. And the dean of the department said to us, his name was Noel Hansen. And I'll never forget how he put it. He said, each and every one of you, if you are not the best artist coming from your respective high schools, there's the door. We do not want you. You already better be established artists and the best around, because we're only going to make you better. We're going to teach you the tools of the trade and make you better. I loved it.
Boy, our lives ran on such similar tracks. Of course, the subject of UFOs couldn't have been further from our minds. How did you get interested in this subject that you are best known for?
Yes and no, because this would have been, I believe it was around 8th grade.
Okay.
And we were at a fair. That was one of the other wonderful things growing up in this community, because I had all these classmates. I had all these neighborhood friends all around my age. So there was never any lack of activity. It was like every day something else was going on at someone else's house.
Cool.
I was constantly eating out at someone else's home, spending the night camping, playing dodgeball, playing tag, playing football, playing baseball. You got on your bike in the morning, you took off, and you came home for lunch, you took off again, and mom and dad didn't have to give a second thought as to you coming home safe. Because it was like everybody was taking a note of where everybody was and looking out for one another, but with full confidence that everything was well. Nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
And so I'm at a family get-together involving the relationship, and we were outside, and you remember how as, younger boys, and you're looking up to the high school, guys, they're already like the kings of the block already. They've been there. They know everything. So we believed. And there was something that passed overhead in the nighttime sky. And I'll never forget listening in, and it's their discussion about, well, what if it's not from here? What if it's one of those? And then finally the term, what if it was a flying saucer? And my ears just perked up, and it was like, wow, I never gave that a second thought. And I remember, there were movies like The Day the Earth Stood Still, and Invasion from Mars, and Earth versus the Flying Saucers, and The Thing. And to me, it was just wonderful entertainment. It scared me. I mean, I can't tell you how often I woke up in the middle of the night thinking Gort, the robot from The Day the Earth Stood Still, was standing in the bedroom doorway and watching that shield go up.
That's bad. That's bad. You know what's going to happen next.
Yes. And so it was a Christmas shortly thereafter. And again, I'm in the book section of the department store. Mom and Dad are, buying up other things, and I want to go to the book section. And I think it was a Gimbel Schuster store at that time. And there was a book that caught my eye because it used the same words as the Kennedy assassination and the Warren report, cover-up, whitewash. And it was the Frank Edwards book, Flying Saucers, Serious Business.
Yep.
And I grabbed the book and I ran to Mom and Dad. Can I have this book for Christmas? Well, of course you can. It was only the paperback edition anyway. So it was all of, 50 cents, whatever it was. But I read the book front to back within a couple of days.
Yeah.
And it was the one chapter that truly intrigued me, fascinated me, was the chapter entitled, Who's Driving? And it was all the occupant cases. So the next book I bought was Flying Saucer Occupants, authored by Coro and Jim Lorenzen.
Oh, boy, you started with some prose.
And so I was hooked. I was hooked to the point, Peter, that by the time I was in speech class in high school, I was giving a speech on UFOs without so much as a note card.
Good Lord.
And my teacher would be Arden Buchholz was my teacher. And he would go, Don, you're a natural. You should even consider going into public speaking.
About UFOs.
About UFOs.
Oh, my gosh. This is extraordinary, the way things happen.
The way things, as though they were destined, as though it was being,
So from that point on, that was a thread that ran through your life. You continued your reading and learning more and more about this subject.
And then working with Hynek.
Well, let's start.
Almost like a police artist. Yeah.
Remember that we have part of our audience who are new to this subject. Others know that Dr. J.Allen Hynek, the head of astronomy studies at Northwestern University, was by this time the most important figure, the most high visibility figure regarding the subject of UFOs, not just in America, but internationally.
Globally.
And Dr. Hynek, I mean, nobody really came close to him, and it's ironic that you worked for him and got so close to him for so many years. And after Dr. Hynek passed, I mean, I'd already been working with Bud Hopkins, who kind of became, after that, the best-known figure in the world, taking us to 1978 here, this famous photograph of Dr. Hynek. Now, you, of course, are very familiar with this. We have Sir Eric Gehry, the Prime Minister of Grenada, on the left. Dr. Hynek.
Larry Coyne from the famous Coyne helicopter case.
Right. And this is a special committee meeting of a special political committee meeting of the General Assembly of the United Nations that took place in November of 1978. We have a close-up here of Dr. Hynek and Sir Eric, but what I wanted to share with you is I'm already at this point 2 years into the work. I entered it very differently than you did, but my first job, per se, was working as an editor on a paper that my first mentor, the late, great Koman von Kavetsky, retired major of the Royal Hungarian Army Staff, had been asked to do for the Secretary General, Kurt Waldheim. We learned a little later that he was SS, but at the time we just knew he was German.
But Kurt Waldheim was actually quite supportive and outspoken on the subject of UFOs.
You better believe it. You better believe it. And not only did I attend those meetings, but my parents, who were by this point quite intrigued themselves, both took the day off. And at a break where we all took lunch, I'm standing in the lobby of the Secretariat, that main low building with the large covering, and I'm chatting with my parents, and a UN photographer comes up to us, just kind of intrigued, and asks us who we are and what we're doing there, and then asks us if he can take our picture. And this is me that day at the UN with my mom and dad.
Wow.
In my only suit with my nice 70s hair and glasses. Statue of Zeus in the background.
The lapels on the jacket, right? And the wide tie. Yes. Yeah.
Bingo. And my dad, 70 sideburns, and my mom puffing away on one of her beloved Pall Malls when you could smoke anywhere in the world inside a building.
Yes. Yes.
And one of the ironies is another dear friend and close colleague of ours, Lee Spiegel, who was like a savant. He put this event together. He's the man behind the scenes. We didn't meet for another 10 years. But just wanted to touch base on that. Also, for folks that are new to this subject, Dr. Hynek
was 7-second cameo. Yeah.
He is literally playing himself in a cameo at the climax of Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind. That is Dr. Hynek, who you worked for more than a decade. Please tell us how this happened and about working with him.
I was the main investigator in Wisconsin at that time for the Area Phenomena Research Organization.
Okay, APRO.
And because it was originally founded in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin.
Oh my.
Before then finally establishing a headquarters in Tucson, Arizona, there was a special bond there because they would come back to Wisconsin and we would meet and I would go to Arizona. And so there was a special relationship. But as you remember, Peter, especially Coral, she did not get along with Dr. Hynek.
Right.
Because there was a tinge of competition and because APRO was the oldest civilian UFO organization in the world at that time. And then when Hynek would establish CUFOS, the Center for UFO Studies, in the fall of 1973, that Coral was taken a bit aback. Why haven't you we invited you to work with us. We invited you to serve as a scientific consultant with APRO. Here you're establishing your own group, that type of thing. And that only intensified, even got worse, with MUFON, with Walt Andrus. And the difference being that Andrus took pretty much the mailing list of APRO for his own. Gosh. Whereas Hynek at least was starting on his own. He was establishing his invisible college, as he called it, and he wanted to be more scientific. He wanted it to be more of a think tank. And CUFOS was often labeled a bunch of elitists that we were overseeing. We were refereeing and judging and critiquing others' work when in reality we were establishing our own parameters, our own paradigms as far as looking into the UFO phenomenon. And so Hynek had seen some of my work at APRO. And I just live 2 hours north. I'm just 2 hours away from Chicago. So he invited me down to his home in Evanston on Ridge Avenue, just down from the Evanston Memorial Hospital.
And here he is with his wife, Mimi, who you knew, of course.
Right. And we were, this was at the residence of Dick Budeman, who was the consultant to Mayor Henry Meyer of Milwaukee at that time. And it was the mayor of Milwaukee's way of throwing a private party for us when we were all together in Milwaukee. And it was the way Hynek, we not only became personal friends, but as he observed my work and he saw my case reports and he saw that I was so overly critical that he appreciated the fact that not only my knowledge, but the fact that I was explaining away cases that he was even leaning towards accepting. And I'll never forget one time, and our vice president, the late John Timmerman of Lionel, Ohio.
I remember John.
Yeah. And they had established a investigators training course, and then a final test, a final exam to actually become a field investigator with QFOS. And I already was working as a special investigator with Hynek. It was a select group of us. There were 6 of us that he called on as his boys. And Mimi would always talk about Alan's boys, and how even after Hynek passed away, she would say that Alan would be so proud of you boys, that type of thing. Well, anyway, we were at the Hynek residence, and John Timmerman brings up, he says to Alan, Don hasn't taken the test yet. Why haven't you had Don take the test? And I will never forget Alan looking at John and going, John, he could test me.
Well, I don't know anybody in the world that can say that. I think we can end the show now, basically. Wow.
Unbelievable.
That's the ultimate compliment.
Yeah. And it's another reason, Peter, that I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't think, what would Alan do?
Yeah.
What would Alan say? And that's why when Don Schmitt has failed, when Don Schmitt has stumbled, when Don Schmitt has made, that major mistake that often would be enough to force someone to walk away, leave it alone. I'm done. I've done the unpardonable sin, that type of thing with ufology. But then I asked myself, what would Alan do? And he would get up, brush himself off, and it's like, damn it, give me another shot, and I'll get it right next time. I'm still in this for the long haul. I mean, it's bigger than all of us. And as a result, we shouldn't, be so arrogant to think that on a human level that if I slip and make, a mistake that maybe others would use to drive that stake through my heart, I'm going to say, no, wait a minute. As long as I have another day, as I've been saying, to get it right, give me that chance. Give me that opportunity. And the field has been wonderful in that regard, because they've been on the sidelines and they have at times been pulling me up and, come on, Don, we want you at the finish line when we get there. And as I've often said, Peter, and you've heard me say it, it doesn't matter who amongst us, any of our colleagues, if any one of us win, we all win.
Yes, exactly.
I just want to be at the finish line.
Exactly. It's a sad notion that there's only enough space for a certain number of people in any given field, when we know not only is that not the case, but allegorically the more the merrier, and the more important work gets done. I have a question for you, Don, that's been kind of percolating away from me. I meant to ask years. Both of us are serious students of history, and in this sense, particularly post-war American history. Dr. Hynek, up until a certain point in his life, 71, 72, 73, about the time you met him, well, even 71 maybe, was living a double life. He was a scientist associated with the subject, again, like Donald K. Menzel, who was the head of astronomy studies at Harvard, and who, as we know from Stan Friedman's brilliant research and a paper that changed my life, The Secret Life of Donald K. Menzel, establishing that while he was this major respected academic, he was also a very useful member of the national security apparatus and the godfather of debunkers, and in particular, the godfather of the debunker of our time, who is gone now to meet his reward, Philip Klass. Dr. Hynek in the 50s was a useful asset of the CIA, and best documented for most of us in the fascinating Robertson panel report of early 1952. Three.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I would suggest to anybody interested in this, you can download it online or you may have it in an anthology. But this was a series of, I think, 4 days of meetings of individuals consulting with and part of the CIA, where they were discussing the best ways to educate people relative to their concerns about the UFO phenomena and implications for humanity, the fact that they were looking for ways to undercut it, and brilliantly so. In fact, that document is the first time I am aware of, although the word may pre-exist it, of the word debunk. Mm-hmm. And in thinking about it and loving language, my dad's generation, your dad's generation, I remember my grandfather saying, "Oh, that's a lot of bunk."
Yeah.
And to debunk. Anyway, Dr. Hynek was instrumental in trying to come up with ways to convince the American public, nothing here, nothing to see, move along, folks, smoke and mirrors. I think my best understanding is that the brilliant, courageous atmospheric physicist, Dr. James McDonald,
yes.
who died too young and tragically, he was literally crushed by the establishment by almost single-handedly trying to take official science into the realm of serious UFO studies. And he, at some point a year or so before he died, he gave Dr. Hynek hell. He gave him a piece of his mind. And I think McDonald's death weighed heavily on Hynek, and he simply changed his life and turned around, said, "This is what I've been doing. This is what I'm going to stop doing. And this is what I'm going to start doing." And I always held him in tremendous admiration for that, for doing it in the way he did it and moving forward as a heroic figure for a lot of us in the work.
He's a heroic figure as far as I'm concerned, all of us, because as a scientist, the fact that he was able to reverse course, that he was able to actually change 180 degrees.
And admit it in public.
Admit it in public. And in the face of, that he was receiving as far as grants and funding from the federal government, that he was the consultant as far as the Air Force's Project Blue Book for 19 years. He had a wonderful relationship with Blue Book's first director, Captain Edward Ruppelt, because he felt that with Ruppelt that they would get some work done. Hynek at that time was very much in statistical analysis. And with Project Stork, when it was handed over by Blue Book as far as to Battelle Institute, they felt that they would truly make some headway. But the influence of the Air Force was such that, again, as you described, Peter, with the CIA, that they were going to educate the public.
Oh, yeah. And they had called in Walt Disney. And remember, it was Walt Disney Cartoon Studios at the time.
That's right.
They made educational slideshows for the military, and they were willing to sign on. Also, one of the most famous broadcasters in America now, although lost to most younger people, Arthur Godfrey.
Absolutely.
Was one of the most syndicated. He was to broadcasting, to Frank Edwards as well, plus Godfrey was a private pilot, and they had signed him on.
Yep. He had his own personal sighting as a pilot.
Yep.
And you mentioned even Donald Menzel from Harvard, the astrophysicist, and the fact that Hynek did not get along with Menzel at all. In fact, Menzel and Hynek would describe to us how Menzel would come into a projection room, and they would be watching some gun camera footage or something else, and that it was classic for Menzel to step into the room as though he was coming down from Mount Sinai to make his proclamation. And he would step into the projection room, and Hynek and others are watching, and Menzel will look up at the screen, and he would just mutter, "Birds, birds." And then he would step out, that. Yeah. And yet, you're absolutely correct. And that scene with McDonald stepping into Hynek's office at Northwestern and pounding his fist on Hynek's desk, demanding access. Said, "Why are you withholding all this data from your own colleagues.
Yes.
Well, it was because Hynek was under lock and key. He was under a short leash of the government because what Hynek wanted to do, as he explained to McDonald, he wanted to remain attached, that he would have access, because Hynek realized very early on that as he was trotted out in front of the press conferences and in front of all the microphones, and to make the monthly debunking session as to, wow, we were able to explain away this, and we were able to explain this, and we have a solid explanation for this particular sighting, that type of thing. And as a result, Hynek was becoming a magnet. He was finding that more and more military pilots, SAC officers, Strategic Air Command and base commanders, commercial pilots were approaching him and describing to him some of the most unbelievable experiences. And then when Hynek would go down to Blue Book a month later, and he'd go, where's that report from Ohio? Where's that report from Washington that I was, and he was realizing that none of that was ever there.
Damn.
It was all being withheld from him. So he realized that they were using him, to the point that it was after Blue Book. And I not only had the confirmation from the late Jenny Zeidman, who would drive his personal secretary, who would drive him down from Northwestern, from Evanston, down to Dayton, down to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, but also Colonel Robert Friend, who was the second last director of Blue Book.
Right.
And Friend told me the same story, that it was Hynek that after Blue Book, and they were meeting with Colonel George Weinbrenner at Foreign Technology Division at Wright-Patterson. And Hynek storming out of that meeting yelling, "Patsies, patsies, they're trying to make us patsies all over again." Now, this was after Blue Book. This was after Blue Book. So Hynek was conceding that that's all he felt that he was in their eyes. He was a useful tool. And he needed to remain connected. But until the day he died in May of 86, he still had a top security clearance. But they never confided to him. Alan Hendry, when Hynek came out of the surgery at the Moffitt Clinic in San Francisco, and they had removed the brain tumor as best they could. And even in the recovery room, that Alan was tossing and turning and rolling from side to side of the gurney, and he was saying over and over again, "Why can't they tell me now? Why can't they tell me even now?" And there's that famous story that we tell that with Donald Rumsfeld, who was the first Secretary of Defense with the Ford administration. And what most people, even most of our colleagues, don't realize is that when they had the congressional hearings that James McDonald testified at in 1966 in Washington.
Yes.
And who introduced Hynek but his own congressional representative from Illinois, who happened to be Congressman Donald Rumsfeld.
Oh, my gosh.
So then when Rumsfeld became Ford's Secretary of Defense, Hynek is in Washington, and he stops to pay a personal visit to his former congressman, his friend, Donald Rumsfeld. And he's sitting in Rumsfeld's office in Washington, and he's saying, I gave you 20 years of my life. I think I deserve some answers. I think I've earned them. And Hynek would describe to us how Rumsfeld got up from behind his desk, and he gets up, and he walks over, and he stands over Hynek, and he points down into his face and says, "You have no right to know." He acknowledges there is some truth. There is something behind all this, but you have no right to know it.
What colossal arrogance.
Yeah. And it humbled Hynek to the point that he realized it was not going to come from on high. that if it was going to come from anywhere, it was going to come from us. It was going to come from our own research, own investigation. And that was the reason, Peter, that from then on, wherever I would be with Hynek, he would comment over and over again, I'm an old man in a hurry. I'm an old man in a hurry. And me, it wasn't like I'm with the man.
Yeah.
I'm with J.Allen Hynek and we're working out in the field and, you know, I'm observing, you know, that he needs to get the answers. He needs to uncover the truth. And my heart just broke for him.
Yeah.
Because I saw that his clock was only speeding up.
Yeah.
And see him as, you know, he was putting that self-inflicted pressure on solving the ultimate mystery, the mystery of all time.
Yeah.
That he was going to run out of time. And as quickly as we were trying to help him come up with answers, we were failing him. And when I'm asked today, and when I say, not in my lifetime, I think it's all the more reason that we have performed all the more urgently. And as a result, we have outrun our headlights at times. And we've made mistakes. Because I don't want to fall into that same predicament. I don't want to get to the point that I'm also going, I'm an old man in a hurry. Because it's a pathway to failure. And in many ways, Hynek died very bitter, very broken, and very much the failure. I'm sorry to put it that way, but he did. He did not die with any final resolution.
I met J.Allen Hynek only once, but it was memorable in that it was during the Westchester, New York Triangle overflights where it had gotten
exciting.
It had gotten to such a point that a town meeting was called. It was on a Saturday, and it was a huge school auditorium. It was packed. And one regular person after another got up there. Beginning of the video revolution. So we had footage. It was Pete Mazzola, my second mentor, started the Scientific Bureau of Investigation, larger than life, also died much too young. He introduced us. And this is Peter Robbins, who works for Bud Hopkins, and Dr. Hynek's health was already starting to, you could tell he wasn't in top form, but we spent a few minutes together. He was fascinated by Westchester, and although the story was still just breaking in America, also fascinated with the Rendlesham Forest UFO incident. But I have a photo of him and me together. He dressed in a suit and tie as always, me in a black T-shirt. But I'm glad I had a chance to meet him. And obviously we could talk about Dr. Hynek for the rest of the week.
A whole show about Hynek. Absolutely.
And I wanted to go on to another gentleman who had an impact on both of our lives, who we both miss daily. One of the greatest guys in the world, one of the greatest men I've ever met, another true man of science, another huge contributor to the work, and a man who really changed the game. And I bring in Stanton T. Friedman here, gone now 2+ years, thereabouts, because at a certain point, your course was reset, not just on UFO studies, in which you really were, you had such a grounding. But at a certain point, you became a specialist in a certain case, which is how most of the world that follows this subject knows you. And that's, of course, the Roswell crash of 1947. I'm curious to know, number one, how you met Stan and how you became involved in zoning in on Roswell, and again, with the greatest writing partner in the world, Tom Carey, producing one remarkable book after another. But starting with, how did you meet Stan Friedman?
I had met him at a number of the MUFON conventions in the early and then mid-'80s. And we already struck up as far as a friendship, to the extent that when the MJ-12 documents were released.
Oh, boy.
In 1987.
I remember that summer we were at the American University 40th Anniversary MUFON Conference Symposium.
That's correct.
That was a game changer.
Yes, it was. But prior to that, when I received the phone call from Jerry Clark, and Jerry had known Stan since the mid-'70s. And as a result, they already had a heads up on these these smoking gun documents.
Yeah.
And because after Hynek had passed away in 86, I was the one that was selected by the QFOS board to then go on briefing legendary ABC commentator Paul Harvey. And we struck up a wonderful relationship, friendship. Harvey's secretary, June Westgard, whenever Hynek would have a UFO report that would pass, his desk, he would immediately call me up. He'd, Don, do you think I should run with this? And I would tell him more times than not, it's not investigated, leave it alone, that type of thing. Well, anyway, they have the MJ-12 documents. I have not seen page 1. Don, we want you to approach Paul Harvey about this.
Oh, boy.
Will he, take the ball and run with it? And it's like, I'm sorry, I have to see what I'm going to, try to sell him on here. And he's certainly going to want to talk to the very, promoters, the advocates of the documents. So I would arrange for, at the time, it was Bill Moore, certainly, and Jamie Shandere.
Yep.
So it was the three of them, Stan Friedman, Bill Moore, Jamie Shandere.
This book, as we know, came out in 1980, the first book on the subject, Moore being co-author.
And so I arranged for Shandere to meet with Paul Harvey in Chicago.
Oh, my gosh.
And it was a major mistake, Peter, because I had only had long discussions with Shandere over the phone. I had no idea that he was going to show up dressed basically as a biker.
Oh, no.
With a leather jacket and blue jeans.
First impressions are important, and Paul Harvey was old school.
Old school and very religious. And when Shandere started talking about aliens seeding us on planet Earth and that we are crossbreds, that this Christianity, nonsense is not and all this. And Harvey called security to have him removed from the studio.
That means it didn't go well, did it?
And his secretary, June Westgard, calls me up, and it's like, Don, how could you do that? Mr. Harvey feels that you totally betrayed him, and I don't know that he's ever going to want to work with you again. And I could not get out to California fast enough, to Burbank, to meet with Moore and Shandere. How could you guys do this to me? And you ruined a wonderful relationship that I have with a major broadcaster. Yeah. And, well, another whole interview, another whole story, Peter, that we could do on this.
Damn.
But Stan, because he was my friend, he was the one that I was calling on the carpet. He was the one, Stan, you knew what was going on. It was like, no, Don, I didn't. And Stan started to separate himself from Moore and Shandere more and more.
Boy, if only it had been Stan who had shown up that afternoon.
Oh, it would have been a game break, a game break.
All different,
totally different. And to the point that Stan was distancing himself more and more, as I was saying, from Moore and Shandere. And he wanted to work more with Kevin Randall and myself at that time. And as a result, there was a total separation to the point that when Bill Moore did his swan song in Las Vegas,
yes,
that Stan was ready to, Don, can I do a book with you and Kevin Randall?
Oh, for gosh sakes.
He actually approached, me about, can I do a book with you guys? That type of thing. And so in 1990, we are doing the Roswell conference, the Crash conference, sponsored by Hans Adam,
Yes.
the Prince of Liechtenstein.
Yes.
And Kevin and I, we came out with our first book in 1991. And in 1994, when we came out with The Truth About, and Stan and Don Berliner came out with Crash at Corona. Yep. And there was this rivalry, this competition. But our investigations parallel, and there were times that Stan and I worked in the field together.
Yep.
We were interviewing General Thomas DuBose down in Orlando, Florida. We were meeting in New Mexico, tracking down witnesses. And so there was this healthy competition, but nonetheless, we were still working towards that same goal line. Because if either one of us proved Roswell, again, mission accomplished. We've done it. And so at times where Kevin Randall would be, I can't work with Stan, why are you, Don? It's like, yes, but he's the one who turned it over to us. He was the one who at Lake College in Illinois, when I approached him and I had asked him, Stan, do you feel you've taken the investigation as far as you can? Right. Do you feel that there are still witnesses out there? And when he went, Don, there are probably hundreds of witnesses that we've yet to locate, yet to interview. And, well, Stan, what would you think of my helping you? And it was like, Don, please do all you can because I'll be there for you. I'll be there rooting you on. Let's do this. And by the next February, Kevin and I were making that first trip to New Mexico as skeptics, but it was like I was calling up Stan, reporting on what we had learned, who we had talked to, and we developed a very, very healthy, a very tumultuous relationship at times. We'd be yelling at one another. We would be scolding one another. But nonetheless, it was like, okay, now let's retool. Let's regroup. Let's learn from our mistakes. And okay, let's move on. Let's move on. Because it wasn't a linear investigation as much as was going in circles, as much as we might go left, right, diverted, distracted. But the circle was still always expanding forward. We were still always moving forward.
Indeed. You know, there have been professional relationships where people have worked on projects together. They come and they go. Sometimes they're long-term, like romantic relationships, things implode. People look at each other cross-eyed. I certainly understand that in my work as a co-author at one point. But you met up with a guy named Tom Carey, and you wrote a book together, and then another, and then another, and then another. Tom, who happens to be right up there with you in terms of being one of my all-time favorite people in the work, and somebody also who has a very well-rounded life and who is completely without affect. How did you guys meet and start to work together? And I've got a picture of the two of you out in the field here.
At the very debris field, the Brazil debris field where all that wreckage was scattered back in 1947. I've led 5 archaeological digs at the site, and Tom has been there for 3 of them. When we were investigating the Bill Moore, Charles Berlitz version of the 1947 incident, it would describe a group of archaeologists from the University of Pennsylvania who had been working in the area at that time. And so as we were trying to establish whether even such a team of scientists were working in New Mexico in that entire summer, who should step forward and say, well, I'm an anthropologist, I'm living in Philly, and maybe I can help you with that very aspect of the Roswell incident, but Thomas J. Carey. And that was in 1990. a year after we had, started our own independent investigation. And Tom became just a tremendously valuable aspect as far as of his knowledge and tracking down potential archaeologists who were involved, and then others who were working like in the Bat Cave area and in the plains of San Augustine, and then to actually determine who was working north of Roswell at that time, which was Western Texas Tech and Professor William Curry Holden, who was actually leading a team through the northern area of just 35, 40 miles north of Roswell, and then to track him down. And then another archaeologist by the name of Berthrud Schwartz, who was working the Guadalupe Mountains at that time. And Tom discovered, that connection to Roswell at that time. So Tom and I officially became a working team in 1998. And to say that it's been an adventure that we could do a movie that we could write a separate book on would be an understatement, because we still look back and we laugh to the point we cry. We've lost so many of these aunts and uncles that we would spend time in their homes and we would go out and dine with. And it's the saddest element in the entire investigation that every time we return back to Roswell, it grows more and more lonely because everybody's gone. All those key, those principal individuals who weighed so heavily as to our knowledge of what we know now as the true chronology of events, what actually transpired back in July of 1947. And they're all gone. But that's where Tom and I proudly stand up and say, well, we now represent them. We are their families.
We are all standing on the shoulders of giants in moving forward. It's a team effort, even if we're generationally separated. And one of the things that you two have accomplished is, it's 7 books so far that you have written. I'm not remembering the exact number, but you present evidences, the kind of evidence that you can take into a court of law, physical evidence that would stand up under the toughest kind of scrutiny, and does. However, we're not going to get to that in this show. We'll be doing that when you return. And
if I may just quickly make the comment, someone mentioned this just the other day that, you've made a cottage industry of this. And then I thought to myself, well, okay.
What a phrase.
In my mind, the granddaddy of all UFO cases. Everything else is very fleeting. Everything else is now you see it, now you don't. With Roswell, you're talking about the recovery of physical evidence, both material and remains. And let's look at some of the greatest TV series of all time. Let's look at some of the greatest trilogies within film, even works of, as far as great writers. And to suggest that, these were cottage industries. No, they had the opportunity to flesh something out. They had the opportunity to tell the entire story. And as a result, this story is so all-encompassing. It involves not only the witnesses, but their families. And then down up the chain of command, and then the people who were involved in testing and analysis, and on and on and on. And so it's not that we have squeezed every last drop of, detail out. It's that we, throughout the course of a very fluid investigation, have been able to, as this new book now, Touched by Roswell, the fact that all these different people have been impacted just for having been there, for having been raised there, for having been involved, for having been to the museum, having been part of festival, and so on and so on and so on. They have walked away and they are looking up at the sky with a greater perception of what might be out there, and the fact that maybe we have in our possession actual physical proof that we're not alone, that type of thing. How do I Go ahead.
You've done something else. No matter how good anecdotal evidence is, there are always going to be people saying, well, people misremember, they spin things, they have their moment in the sun and they want to, tell a story and be remembered, or they're after some, financial gain or something. You and Tom, through your extraordinary diligence and setting the bar high ethically and in terms of your work habits, so to say, you have elevated the role of witnesses in terms of how you have chronicled them in a way that I'm not familiar with other writers and researchers. And I refer here in particular to two of your books. And I think sentimentally they're my favorites because they involve human beings straight through and not theorizing about other intelligences and hardware of advanced nature. They are, of course, Witness to Roswell and The Children of Roswell.
Yes.
Some years back when you were finishing up the manuscript for Children of Roswell, you sent me a three chapter draft. I think it was Children of Roswell and not Witness to Roswell. I was at the time, staying with friends in Arizona, and I thought, well, I'll give it a look. That was it. I read the first paragraph, and the next thing I knew, several hours had gone by, and I had read it and reread it again because of you, because of Tom. And I've gotten to meet some of these people. Some are gone now, especially the original witnesses, but the children are in their 80s.
And they're also leaving us, right?
Every single one of them has done this, not because they want to be on a television show, not because they want to write a book, not because they wanted a penny, but to put their accounts on the record before they die. And the uniformity of who these people are and their ethics and the lives they lived, these two books all by themselves were instant classics for me. And if you're out there and you're hearing us have this conversation, and it will end abruptly in a few minutes, and Don will be back sometime in June. I hope I'm twisting your arm on that because I'm lucky to be quite.
I will make time.
Okay, good. Good. And we will pick up where we leave off. But if you want to start with two extraordinary, compelling books about people's memories and the children of people who were involved and what they remember, we all love our country or love it, what's best about it, but there are things that are dark corners. And in The Children of Roswell, some of the accounts of what these kids were put through at the age of 12 or so to put the fear of God into them, that they would die, their parents would die, and it wasn't like one or two accounts. It was a program that Army Air Corps was doing because they felt they had to. The security risks were so high. It breaks your heart. It makes you furious. It's absolutely fascinating. It is American history, and it's quality evidence. And again, I'm not even at this point, we're not even going to have a chance to get into the evidentiary aspects of this. I did want to ask you, I mentioned to you before we went on the air, I caught up with Tom Carey last week. We just had a great time for about an hour talking about this, that, and the other thing. And he mentioned that you two are now at work on a new book. And when you described the book to me after his description, I thought, this thing has been waiting to happen. It's going to be an awful lot of fun. It's going to be fascinating. Can you tell us a bit about the new book?
The new book is entitled Touched by Roswell. So it's a non-research, it's a purely entertaining tome that through the years, as we discovered that whether it was Demi Moore or John Denver or Apollo 14, Edgar Mitchell, Roger Staubach, Tommy Brookshire, the famous sportscaster, all these people that grew up in Roswell, were born in Roswell, the dignitaries.
Don, I have to cut you off right there. We're about to go off the air. Don, thank you so much for being my guest. Peter Robbins here with my guest, Don Schmitt. Meanwhile, here on Earth, KGRA Digital Broadcasting, next week's guest, legendary UFO journalist Lee Spiegel. Don't miss it.